Roy Moore. If you don't know Roy Moore, I've covered him quite a few times here on this show. Roy Moore is the uber conservative Republican. And I think conservative at this point is not even a fair way to describe him, because like, I think at a certain point, it goes beyond the label of conservatism and it gets into you're a damn maniac. Yeah, I think that's the more accurate way to describe Roy Moore. He's a freaking maniac. And he presents himself as, somebody should do a study in waves. You have first wave democratization, second wave democratization, first wave feminism, second wave feminism. I think we're having a first, second, and third wave of Republican devolution. Not to get super philosophical or analytical, rather, not philosophical at all, but analytical. Not to get super analytical with it, but it is processual. It is a process. You started off with, I don't know, 2008, 2010, you started getting the first wave of Tea Party Republicans, but then they became normalized. The Ted Cruz and the Jeff Flakes, they became normalized, and they seem more, actually, we can go back further. You had your standard fare Republicans back with George W. Bush, and it took a while, George H.W. Bush, and it took a while before you got his son, which is a different breed of conservative, George W. Bush. But then all hell broke loose when Obama was elected, and you started getting Republicans like I mentioned already, Ted Cruz and Jeff Flake, to come to the Senate. And they came in separate years, but they kind of represent the same style of Tea Party Republican. The Marco Rubio came in 2010, right? And they came on the back of the Tea Party. And at the time, we thought that they were the most extreme Republicans and conservatives that we would ever have to deal with. And then lo and behold, you got the next wave. All right, there's a second wave. And right now it escapes me. I can't pinpoint any name. I'm sure you in the chat room already know who would be a good second wave. Someone elected, even if it was the House, right? House or the Senate. But then there was a second wave of Republican. I would say the second wave of Republican new age conservatives, if we started with Ted Cruz being the first wave, the second wave would have ended with Donald Trump. Can't think really right now off the top of my head who would have initiated it, like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio did in 2010. But Donald Trump definitely represents the culmination of the second wave of idiocy from the devolution of conservatives. There's a third wave coming. There is a third wave coming. And if you thought Ted Cruz was crazy back in 2010, which we did, Marco Rubio particularly, and you thought Donald Trump was a madman, well, then now you have the Roy Moores and the Ed Gillespies, the people who go one step further. And what happens, what's dangerous about this every single time is what happens is that the previous set of Republicans become normalized. Because, partly because, you have Democrats on one side who are saying, oh, George Bush, if we could only have a George Bush, which is imbecilic. But at the same time, they become normalized because the next generation of conservatives are even more insane. And this is exactly the best way to set up who Roy Moore is and why we would even be talking about him, but then why he's uniquely different than even Donald Trump. It is possible to get worse than Donald Trump. And not Jeff Flake, but Roy Moore is that guy. He's running for Senate from Alabama. He believes, now he's been like this a long time. I know Donald Trump is just playing a character, like he used to be a Democrat back when Roy Moore was a staunch conservative. But Roy Moore has been for a long time the type of Republican who can never get into a national office, save a few exceptions. He's worse than Jeff Sessions, even though he's running to replace Jeff Sessions. This guy believes that, there's a clip from, I think he was talking to Bill Moyers years ago. He believes that homosexual behavior, this is what he calls it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Homosexual conduct should be illegal, right? It's not that he just thinks that homosexual conduct is a sin because of his religion, he thinks homosexual conduct should be illegal. Like, he is the quintessential, Roy Moore is the quintessential Christian Sharia law advocate, whatever. And he really believes that. He also has recently said that the First Amendment, in regard to the NFL protests, the First Amendment is only meant for Christians. Like, Ted Cruz is pretty bad. Ted Cruz is pretty horrible. I would never want to see Ted Cruz in the Senate, even though he's already there, and certainly would never want to see him in the White House. But I don't think that you're going to get him making the argument and trying to make the legal justification why Christianity is the only, Christians, or rather, are the only people who the First Amendment was designed for. And in the back of my mind, I know this is not the conversation, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, and somebody probably still thinks there's no such thing as a lesser evil. I'm not going there today. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not really talking about that right now. But the fact is, thanks, babe. The fact remains, this guy has lost his, I mean, if he ever had a mind, he lost it a long time ago. And he represents a new wave of Republicans that is one generation further and more extreme than even Donald Trump. All right, so that's the backdrop of who Roy Moore is, and he's running for Senate. He's in the lead. He's in the lead for the love of God. Like, he's really getting ready to be a senator. And today it came out on the Washington Post that in his 30s, he's in his 70s now, but in his 30s, back in the 1970s, he initiated sexual contact with underage girls, 14, 15, 16. 4 women have come up. And to be clear, the Washington Post made this clear that these women did not come out to the Washington Post. The Washington Post, one of the reporters on the ground there covering Roy Moore, heard rumors about some sexual behavior, inappropriate and illegal sexual behavior that has been lingering around Roy Moore for all of his career. And the Washington Post began to investigate further and further and further, and they finally stumbled onto, or found rather, one of the individuals who said that, yes, Roy Moore, when she was 14, she met him in the courthouse, and he got her phone number, and eventually they took him out. He got her out and initiated sexual contact with her. It doesn't claim any actual sex, but it does demonstrate coercion and the young woman feeling violated. I'm not sure what the laws were at the time, right? But certainly underage. And of course, he denies everything. He's on Twitter talking about it is just an attack from the Obama-Clinton liberal machine, and it's the worst attacks he has ever had to face in his life, and etc., etc., etc. Of course, he's going to deny it all. But these women, I'm sorry, I want to be honest with you. This is a really I have no inclination whatsoever to not believe what these women are saying. There's nothing in me, not besides the fact that I think Roy Moore in general is a disgusting human being, but just the frequency and with which, like, what do people say? What do I hear women say all the time? Believe women, believe them, believe them. I mean, so many people are being exposed, right? And this is obviously, I'm not making a logical argument here in the sense, right? Just because it happens in so many other cases does not mean that it absolutely happened with him. But Roy Moore is a piece of crap. So it most likely happened with him. And I would err on the side of what the woman is saying in this, who was a child at the time. But so many cases are coming out of all these men just nonstop. And I have to take a pause and take an aside. I was wondering whether or not I was going to make tonight about sexual assault again, because it's insane. Oh my God. There's 2 types that I'm starting to see. Most of these guys that we're hearing from in Hollywood, it's a power thing. It's a power thing. It's a control thing. It's sadistic. It's wanting to inflict pain, emotional pain, physical, sexual pain. Louis C.K. on women and some young men, but predominantly women. And it's just like you had a suspicion that it was always there. You know, guys, right? Women didn't have suspicion. They had experience. But guys, we had a suspicion that it was always there because, you know, it just was always there. But now you're having case after case after case, proof after evidence. Harvey Weinstein tape where he's confessing to groping the model. You know, it's just case after case after case, and it's rather consistent and rather fitting that this is coming home to roost. These chickens are coming home to roost for a guy who runs around the country talking as though he is the most devout Christian that we've ever seen in our life. You know, and it never ceases to amaze me when I run into people who are so concerned about what you're doing in your bedroom that they end up being the worst. I mean, not just sexual deviancy, but like, you know, yeah, I mean, just the assault of children. So it's two different types. I mean, you have these religious fundamentalists who are so sexually repressed and trying to be something on the outside that they're not, that they end up doing all kinds of things. You know, there's so many skeletons in their closet, like literally sometimes in their closet, but they're so busy. Remember Jimmy Swaggart? I mean, I do an impression of him all the time because it's such a great example. I used to watch Jimmy Swaggart coming up, and I remember watching him when he got on television because he had hired a prostitute to, you know, have sex with a prostitute, and then he got exposed nationally. But I mean, dude, you spent all of your Sunday mornings telling people about their sexual behavior, right? And how they should do this and how they shouldn't do that. And then it turns out you're out here turning tricks. You know what I mean? You're out here picking up prostitutes, and then he gets on television and he, you know, and this is one of the problems with Christianity when it's in public, is that in society, is that, you know, it becomes an excuse because they've asked for forgiveness. Now everybody should just move on. You know, just because you got on television and said, I've sinned. I can't do it again. I do it all the damn time because it's so damn funny. I've sinned against you, God. You know, just because you do that doesn't mean, yeah, okay, God forgave you, but we aren't forgiving you. You know, forgiveness is for God. You still got to pay the piper down here, Roy Moore. And the amazing thing is that you're going to have quite a few conservatives who are going to still support him no matter what. They're still going to vote for this dude, and they're still going to vote for him based on the idea that he is a Christian and he has family values. You know what kind of family values he has? He has family values such that, according to the Washington Post, he's going to convince and get the confidence of your child's mother, of the mother, right? And tell her, oh, you don't want her to go into this courtroom and look at all these divorce proceedings and all these custody proceedings. Leave her out here. Leave her out here with me. And then he ends up taking her out somewhere because you trust the man. It's the 70s were good. Everybody trusted everybody. You let your 14-year-old go with a 32-year-old guy at the time. And I won't go into the details of of how it transpired and what happened, but it's in the article in the Washington Post. These are the Christian values that people are still saying that they're going to vote for in the special election that's coming up in December. Never ceases to amaze me. Last couple thoughts on Roy Moore. We can't point out the hypocrisy because that doesn't faze them. You still have people saying that they're going to support him. I am encouraged by the number of Republicans who are saying that he needs to step down, which is like 3. I must say that I'm actually encouraged by the number of people who are telling him that he needs to step down.